Good afternoon. It's Sunday, June 28th. I'm Laura Cornfield, and this is IBA News, broadcasting from Jerusalem. The Cabinet voted this morning to transfer control over the country's natural gas resources to the government, following that decision passed on Thursday by the Security Cabinet. The Prime Minister also spoke out against the world power's impending nuclear deal with Iran a little over 48 hours before the deadline. Here with more is IBA's Eli Walgalanter.
With one vote against and 3 abstentions, the government approved the transfer of Article 52 of the 1988 antitrust law from the hands of Economy Minister Aryeh Deri to those of the government on the issue of Israel's natural gas resources, using a clause that has never before been used in Israel's history. Through this clause, an antitrust commissioner can be prevented from interfering in a restrictive agreement due to reasons of foreign policy or national security, which is what the government is declaring the resources development. I am determined to promote a realistic solution that will bring gas to the Israeli market, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said at a cabinet meeting. I will not capitulate to populist proposals that will leave the gas deep underground. He said the guidelines formulated breaks up the monopoly and that in the coming decades it will put hundreds of billions of shekels into education, culture, health, and many other things for the benefit of all Israeli citizens. After years of discussions, the time has come to decide so that the gas will emerge from the ground and reach the Israeli economy and the citizens of Israel. While this step still requires Knesset approval tomorrow, the decision paves the way for the announcement of a compromise outline among government officials and gas companies aimed at settling 6 months of clashes over the gas. Environmental Protection Minister Ali Gabay of Kulanu voted against the transfer, while 2 fellow party members, Finance Minister Moshe Kachlon and Construction Minister Yoav Gallant, abstained from the vote, as did Welfare Minister Chaim Katz of Likud. The gas decision by the cabinet follows a protest in Tel Aviv last night, when thousands of demonstrators rallied against the government's plan. Opponents of the gas deal say it amounts to robbery of Israel's natural resources and are urging government transparency on the agreement. Critics say the deal might strengthen the gas monopoly because Israel's Delek Group and America's Noble Energy will maintain a de facto monopoly over the Tamar field for the next 6 years before entering a similar partnership to develop the Leviathan field. Other news coming out of the coalition, and this one is surprising a lot of people. Education Minister Naftali Bennett of Bayit Yehudi is now taking an unexpected stance on Gaza, advocating for supporting a deal in which Israel would enable the economic development of the Strip in return for a promise of a long-term ceasefire with Hamas. It's for a change of policy, Bennett told Channel 2. We need to initiate an international move for the civilian rehabilitation of Gaza in return for a halt to the rearming. Meretz leader Zahara Galon praised Bennett for his stance, saying, better late than never. Finally, Netanyahu called on foreign leaders to reach an agreement with Iran that would actually prevent Tehran from obtaining nuclear weapons, and that Western concessions to Iran over its nuclear program were increasing. We are now witnessing a clear withdrawal from the red line set by the powers for themselves, and recently and publicly, Netanyahu told the ministers, adding that there was no reason to hurry to sign the deal with Iran, which he said was getting worse by the day. Laura?
Thank you, Eli. Intensive negotiations are underway in Vienna as 6 world powers and Iran continue efforts to reach a nuclear arms deal before the June 30th deadline. Western diplomats say that hard work is still needed for what could be their final negotiations to bridge significant differences. French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius said that there are 3 indispensable conditions still to be finalized: a lasting limitation of Iran's research and development capacity, rigorous inspection of sites, including military, and the automatic return of sanctions if Iran violates its commitments. The self-imposed deadline for a deal under which Iran would set back its nuclear program in exchange for relief from economic sanctions is due to expire on Tuesday. The main differences are the pace and timing of sanctions relief and the nature of monitoring mechanisms to ensure that Tehran does not cheat on any agreement.
Well, I think it's fair to say that we're hopeful. We have a lot of hard work to do. There's some very tough issues, and I think we all look forward to getting down to the final effort here to see whether or not a deal is possible. I think everybody would like to see an agreement, but we have to work through some difficult issues.
Well, I agree. Maybe not on the issues, but on the fact that we need to work really hard in order to be able to make progress and move forward. We're determined to do everything we can in order to be able to make this important milestone. but that depends on a lot of things, and we're going to work on them and find out.
Back here at home, a short time ago, several air raid sirens sounded in the Hermon area of the Golan Heights. It is unclear if any rockets or mortars fell inside Israel, or as in the past, the sirens were set off by spillover from the Syrian civil war just across the border. This morning, sirens also wailed in the Chof Ashkelon region. The rocket apparently fell within Palestinian territory. However, the IDF said no projectiles were found inside Israel. Elementary schools in more than 80 towns across the country were empty today as pupils and parents went on strike to protest the crowded classroom conditions, which they claim is harmful to the quality of education. Dubbed the Sardines protest, demonstrators say that in many elementary schools there are as many as 40 students per class, a condition that makes it extremely difficult for pupils to properly learn. The protesters are demanding a cap of 32 students per class. The strike went on despite calls by Education Minister Naftali Bennett to send the children to school and despite the objection of National Parents Organization, which said it does not support the action of the local parents' committees. The so-called Freedom Flotilla, intent on breaching the Israeli naval blockade, is getting ever closer to the Gaza shore. The ships are making their way toward the shores of the Hamas-run enclave without disturbances. Organizers say that 4 out of the 5-boat convoy have successfully embarked from separate European ports, including the Greek island of Crete, and are slated to reach the waters off Gaza within the next few days. It is not clear at this time how they will be allowed to proceed when they reach the area. Aboard the vessels are some 50 activists, including Arab-Israeli Knesset member Basel Ratis of the Joint Arab List, who insists the mission is humanitarian and that it is meant to raise awareness of the siege on the Strip. Anti-terror demonstrators took to the streets of Tunis last night, protesting the massacre of 39 people at a beach hotel in an attack claimed by Islamic State. It was the worst terror attack in Tunisian history. Dozens of people were also wounded in the incident in the seaside port town of Sousse when an armed man went on a shooting spree through the beach, swimming pool, reception, and offices of the Imperial Marhaba Hotel and tossed grenades at the victims, who were mostly Western tourists. 15 British tourists were killed in the attack. Most of the other victims were Irish and German. The gunman was killed in a firefight with police outside the hotel. He was identified as 24-year-old Saif Rezki. He arrived at the site posing as a tourist with his Kalashnikov and grenades hidden in his beach umbrella. France and other European nations have issued terror alerts following Friday's Islamist attack on a gas plant in the southeast of the country. During the attack on the Air Products gas plant in Grenoble, a 53-year-old boss of the company was beheaded. The suspected attacker is a 35-year-old who is said to have ties with extreme Salafist groups. The gunman placed the boss's head on the factory's gate along with Islamic flags and then drove his van into the plant, causing the explosion. He was grabbed by firefighters while attempting to blow up the facility. Residents of the town are trying to get a grasp of what happened.
For us, it's a strange atmosphere. We are shared between a kind of fear and a kind of a question. We wonder why. We don't understand why. And what people need is to understand. They cannot imagine that there can be another explosion. So security measures has been taken to close the enterprise and to protect the people.
When I heard about the attack, first I could not really believe that it happened in my town, but that is what new terrorism looks like today. I think it is very personal things, and I think you cannot just say that it happens anywhere else in the world. It also happens just where you live. So it is quite shocking, but it was more shocking yesterday after the attack, because today I think it is better to give a message of peace and solidarity to the world.
In Kuwait City, thousands of Shiite mourners gathered to bury the dead from Friday's Islamic State suicide bombing at a central mosque. 27 people were killed in that attack, along with some 200 injured at the Imam Sadiq Mosque. Islamic State claimed responsibility for the attack. Kuwaiti authorities today identified the bomber as a Saudi citizen, Fad Suleiman Abdul Musan al-Kuwaibieh. He reportedly flew into Kuwait airport on Friday morning and hours later detonated the explosives. Police are holding the man who allegedly drove the attacker to the mosque as a possible accomplice. A short time ago, IBA's Efrat Batat spoke to Dr. Yoram Kahati of the Institute for Counterterrorism at the IDC about the latest wave of terror and asked him if the three-continent attacks are the beginning of a new era in global terrorism.
These attacks are, in fact, another series of attacks that started before. We are, in fact, having a second stage, which started in the beginning of this century, in September 11 in the States, in the United States. And now we have, in fact, another stage or series of attacks that started or are connected to the Islamic State, called usually ISIS or ISIL, which is based in parts of Syria and Iraq.
Do you believe that ISIS is behind these three-continent attacks?
It is quite possible, because I think that at least most of them or all of them have been acknowledged by their spokesmen. So in this case, they usually take charge about such attacks. And even though it takes sometimes more time, the nature of the attacks and what we saw is similar to what they did in the past in other places.
Now, among the targets are not necessarily Western ones. We saw the attack Kuwait, Tunisia, even mosques, which are sacred to Islam. How do you explain this?
Well, in Tunisia, according to what has been reported, the guy did not want to attack Muslims. So he used to ask, are you Muslim or Arab? And then he did not attack them, and attacked the Western tourists, mostly British. Now, it is true that such people, in fact, are being radicalized in mosques. In this case, could be anywhere. And he was also radicalized in a mosque in Tunisia. And in this case, we saw a combination of attacks. Some were in Tunisia and Kuwait against the Shia mosques that are part of the Arab world, and the other one in France, in the West.
You mentioned the nature of these attacks. Are we witnessing a new era, a new phase in global terrorism?
It is quite possible, although we saw something similar with the attacks of Al-Qaeda. But in this case, at least what we see in the media, they are trying to make sure that most of all the world we see with the development of the media today, what they are doing, which is seen by the West as very, ugly and, very, very unpleasant, more than unpleasant, when in fact they are now became famous with the beheadings of people. So in this case, it is something that even Al-Qaeda didn't go that far. And in this case, it's something unique to them at this time.
An earthquake was felt in numerous places around the country yesterday evening. The Israel Geological Survey reported that it measured 5.5 on the Richter scale and that the epicenter of the earthquake was 90 kilometers south of Eilat in the East African Rift near the Sinai resort of Nuweiba. Israelis reported feeling the tremor all over the south in Gush Dan, Jerusalem, Netanya, and as far north as Nazareth Eilat. No damages or injuries were reported. New basketball champs Hapoel Jerusalem had a busy day today following their historic win Thursday night. This morning they were guests at the president's residence in the capital. President Reuven Rivlin complimented Hapoel on their taking the giant plate-shaped trophy, adding that the Israeli players on the team make up an integral part of the squad, and he is very proud of their achievement. After a toast, team captain Yotam Halpern presented the president with an Hapoel Jerusalem uniform autographed by all the players. President Rivlin also thanked the foreign players.
Welcome to all of you. It is a great pleasure as a Jerusalemite to celebrate along with you, and you are Jerusalemites because you went into the book of the history of Jerusalem, bringing the first championship to the Jerusalem team. So we are celebrating along with you, and you could be crowned as the Jerusalemites for the history of Jerusalem, because after 3,000 years of Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish people, you brought the first championship to Jerusalem.
From the president's residence, Hapoel Jerusalem made their way to the office of Jerusalem mayor near Barkat, where the celebrations continued. The mayor is a die-hard Hapoel fan. He attended many games this season, and he partied with the thousands of fans in post-game celebrations. It took 70 years for Jerusalem to win the title, and Mayor Barkat wants it to be the first of many.
We don't want to wake up from the dream we're in. Everyone in Jerusalem and the majority of the Israeli public looked with admiration at the results of winning our first championship. And we all understand that it's an amazing team effort, starting from the new ownership that are willing to invest significant amount of capital and give us an opportunity to get the best players on board, with a new infrastructure and a new arena that we just inaugurated this year, and an amazing fan base.
Taking a look at local finance with no currency tradings on Sunday, the shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange started off the trading week in the minus column. Here's a look at the mid-afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, and temperatures will remain unseasonably cool for the next several days under partly cloudy skies. Here are the highs and lows for the next 24 hours at home and abroad. And that's all for this newscast. Aaron Viner will be here tomorrow with more news from Israel and abroad. Until then, I'm Laura Cornfield, wishing you a great evening and shalom from Jerusalem.